Hello everyone and welcome to another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this battle I'm going to be playing the Dwarfs led by the High King Thorgrim. And guys, I'm actually doing a bit of a mass Vanguard strategy. We're going to be facing off against the Greenskins in a classical grudge match. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed this one. So the first thing to point out is I actually did have a Vanguard force over here. So you can see I do have BUGMAN'S Rangers, some regular Rangers, and my opponent also Vanguarded. So his Goblin Wolf Riders were just kind of hanging out here, and right when the battle started, they just take a huge volley of fire from all of those Rangers, which I thought was pretty great. So they're going to start wavering and probably rout here pretty quickly, but anyways, my general strategy was I wanted to have a main force that was looked a little bit convincing as my main army. So I brought some expensive troops. In the front line I have Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, some Longbeards with Great Weapons to help deal with Black Orcs, and the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass on the flanks. The Greenskins definitely have a pretty good matchup against the Dwarfs because they have a lot of different tools. They can bring Black Orcs in the front line, which will trade pretty effectively with most Dwarf infantry, but they can also bring Goblins, nasty Skulkers and different things like that. And Great Weapons do not do very well against high density units like Goblins, so definitely some tricky business going on. But anyways, here's my front line, and I also do have the High King Thorgrim right here. So Thorgrim himself actually does have the Great Book of Grudges. So if we look right here, for those of you guys that are just joining or haven't seen this before, he gives plus 12 melee attack, a pretty big radius. So you can see these Longbeards over here on the top are getting it, the Ironbreakers, maybe these guys, and then the guys in the back are also getting that. So that's a huge buff. 12 melee attack is pretty massive. The Grumbling Guard in the back to give that Vigor aura. So if you guys look right here, you can see this. Gives 18% vigor to it has to hit the center mass. So you see that aura, it has to basically hit the center flag. So this group right here probably isn't getting that aura, so I definitely need to adjust a little bit. On the flanks I got some Dwarf Warriors. I have the Godlobber, which is pretty much a staple against Greenskins. It's so effective at taking out Black Orcs. I definitely recommend bringing this bad boy, and some miners just to kind of protect it. But my mass Vanguard over here is doing pretty well for itself. I do have the Rangers and everyone kind of poking these guys down. And what's going to be really nice is, my main force is going to engage and kind of force them into combat. And then with the Rangers, I can get up on the high ground, kind of sneak up here, and then just shoot down in the valley at some of his troops, which hopefully will pay off. In order to protect my Vanguard, I have some miners with blasting charges. So the blasting charges are very good against, lightly armored units. I mean, they do okay against Black Orcs, but where they really shine is against units that don't have much armor. So even against Goblin Wolf Riders and Orc Biggins and, even Squigs, they can do a ton of damage. Right? I like using these guys as kind of a defensive Vanguard, which is going to be pretty neat. So you can see as far as my Vanguard force goes, I do have 2 miners right here, 2 right here, and then the Ranger contingent. So for my opponent, he does have a little bit of Vanguard action himself. 2 Night Goblin Archers right here, probably looking to apply some poison as I march on. He does have an Arachnoid Queen hiding in the bushes over here, and I don't know, was it attacked by artillery? I don't remember shooting it, but regardless, the Arachnoid Queen isn't a bad pick against the Dawi. It's heavily armored, and the armor piercing options I have are what are they? The Grumbling Guard and Longbeards, but I don't have any Thunders or anything really heavy to kind of shoot through 150 armor. And that's also another thing about the Arachnoid Queen is Slayers can deal with it okay, but Slayers themselves don't really have good armor piercing, so it's a little bit tricky for them to get through that 150 armor. For his front line, he has a combination of Orc Boys and Black Orcs, which is, pretty standard protocol. When I play against the Dawi, I really like to bring Black Orcs and Orc Boys and just kind of, try and swarm. Whereas if you bring just Black Orcs, they can be isolated by the Godlobber and can take some very heavy Thunder fire, and your army can be thinned out very quickly. He does also have a few Biggins, which I normally wouldn't bring, but you know what? We'll see how they do. So for his leadership, he does have Azag. So Azag right here has the Fate of Buna, which I actually really like against the Dawi. It's great against the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers and the Grumbling Guard and these very high-value infantry groups. And he also does have a Goblin Shaman. So guys, a little bit of a PSA. If you are playing Greenskins against a non-magic using faction like the Dawi, definitely get rid of Sneaky Stealing. It doesn't have any applications to the Dawi, and it, it's a little bit expensive. You can get a few extra chevrons or even some goblins, extra goblins in the mix. He does have the Crimson Killers too, so the Regiment of Renown of Black Orcs. These guys have pretty, powerful splash attacks and definitely do some work if left unimpeded. So guys, without further ado, let this ridiculous game begin. So right now what I'm going to be immediately doing is just charging my Dawi forces up the hill. So you can see my Rangers, they've kind of secured their Vanguards. So the BUGMAN'S Rangers are going to lead these guys up the hill. And if we can get up here and, get this nice little position like over here in the forest or even over here, he's going to have to charge uphill. He's going to take blasting charges. He's going to be taking that withering fire. And you can see right now that the Godlobber is already shooting in here and doing some pretty substantial damage. We've already taken out, 7 Black Orcs? That's pretty nice. But I actually didn't see the Crimson Killers because they were actually kind of in the trees. So if you zoom up, you can see the trees will disappear as I get further away. So I know a lot of you guys were asking how to set that. So you see right now, I go into the trees disappear. When I go away, you know, they're back in action. So you go to spacebar right here, and there is one of these buttons right here, which is hide foliage. So you can kind of toggle that to always hide and just adjust that accordingly, which is pretty helpful. So right now you can see the Goblobber shooting in here and taking out some of these guys. That Crimson Killer goes flying into the distance there. Definitely not a good time for him. And my main Dawi force is advancing very aggressively. I didn't want to sit back because I didn't want him to swarm my Vanguard. If my Vanguard force didn't have any support, he would have been able to just, you know, crush them. And then my main army, had I been like turtling in a traditional Dawi faction, would have been in a little bit of trouble. So right now you can see my Rangers are going to open up on these big guns, and big guns, you know, have 50 armor, so they're not complete pushovers and taking missile fire, but still, it's definitely not a good situation for them. And I knew he was immediately going to react and chase me, so I started throwing blasting charges. So you can see the big guns are just getting blasted in the forest while they're taking withering missile fire. So definitely a cool little synergy. I like using the miners as like a Vanguard protection force. And then as soon as he charges them, I just retreat. And the whole time I'm retreating with the miners, he's going to be taking additional missile fire. So you can see the second batch of blasting charges is coming into the forest here, and these big guns are definitely in the wrong neighborhood. So they're gonna take a bit of a beating here for sure. Look at their HP as they take these. So it goes down pretty hard. You know, these Rangers and everyone are withering them down. And right now you can see I'm just going to retreat. I'm not going to let them fight. I'm just going to keep running while they take that fire. Over here on the far side, you can see these blasting charges are also hitting his cav, because, you know, he was probably going to try and overwhelm my miners, because miners do have pretty bad stats. And then, you know, that would have opened up my Rangers. So, you know, he was charging in. But guys, take a look at the damage that these blasting charges do. I mean, that's pretty massive damage against a lightly armored unit. He does still get in there, but the miners should be able to hold there, especially since they're so beat up. And you can see these big guns are chasing, but they're just taking so much fire, and they actually break. So that was the whole reason I didn't engage, because they probably would have killed, you know, 10 or 15 of these guys, and there's more blasting charges as they try and get away, which is pretty awesome. You can see a nice Fade Abuna from my opponent going down on some of my Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. So these guys, you know, for the most part, probably going to be offline here in a minute. So, well played by my opponent there. The Grudge Bearer is kind of leading the pack, his throng against these foul Greenskins, but he is taking a lot of damage. He's fighting against Crimson Killers, but he's immediately going to get a hard on and just go after Azag. You know, something a lot of people don't give Thorgrim credit for is he's like, you know, he kind of seems like an aura commander, like a commander that sits there and provides a great book of grudges, but he is a monster of a duelist. He actually has 62 melee attack, 60 melee defense, 120 armor, and outstanding weapon strength. The one thing he does lack are really high armor piercing values, but nonetheless, just look how horribly he's beating down Azag. Granted, Azag isn't really like a true melee combatant. He's more of like a wizard type character, but you know, Azag still does have 60 melee attack himself, but Thorgrim just lays an absolute whipping on him. So you can see he's actually running and he's broken right here. The balance of power is starting to shift a little bit in my favor. You can see right here, the Arachnarch Queen, however, is kind of tearing into my front line a little bit, doing some work against some of these miners. And the miners, I'm not sure. Yeah, they're not immune to psychology. And I know Thorgrim with his High King buff does give them immunity to psychology, but I don't think it applies unless his leadership is at a certain threshold. So in the forest, you can see the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are chasing after some of these Gobbo archers. They're pretty pissed about getting Fade Abuna cast on them. They're definitely going to route these little Gobbos back into the Shadow Realm. Over here, my miners are also advancing. They're out of blasting charges, so they can't really, you know, do some skirmishing tactics with these guys, but hopefully they can catch them. The one mistake I made is I should have left one group of miners to protect all of my Rangers and other guys over here, you know, who still have a fair amount of ammunition, but they're going to get jumped right now. So these Goblin Wolf Riders and these Forest Goblin Spider Riders are coming in here. They'll apply some poison, but Rangers aren't pushovers in melee. So I'll go ahead and show you guys in just a moment, but I turn in. I do try and last samurai them at the last second, but you can see my guys are a little bit slow on drawing their bows. The ones in the back line might get a few volleys off, but you know, Goblin Wolf Riders don't really have heavy mass, so they'll get a little bit of a charge. You know, send some of these Dawi flying, but it's not going to be like if some Orc Biggins had like charged through here. You would see a ton of these guys flying right here, and you can actually see some of the Goblins go flying in the opposite direction upon their charge. But so regular Rangers, let's go ahead and take a look. Where are their stats? Okay, so they have 16 and 28 for melee attack and melee defense, whereas the BUGMAN'S Rangers are 21 and 31. So the BUGMAN'S Rangers are, you know, almost equivocal to like Dwarf Warriors in combat. And you can see they're doing a pretty good job of fending off these Goblin Wolf Riders right here. So definitely some fun stuff going on. The Arachnarch Queen in the main fight is getting a little bit crazy in here. It's attacking some of my guys, but I do have Thorgrim attacking it. And though, you know, this thing does have 150 armor, Thorgrim still hits hard and has probably like 150 armor piercing damage, something in that range. So hopefully he'll be able to finish the Queen. But I wanted to just get this this missile fire kind of shooting at it, because even though most of it's going to be mitigated down, and you know, it still adds up. It's kind of like that withering missile fire that just kind of peppers these units down. So there kind of has been a second front. His main line is being a little bit collapsed. These big uns they're definitely having some problems, and blasting charges. I think blasting charges have pretty poor AP values, but I got to do some testing to actually check that out. But over here in the forest, you can see some of my miners have pushed. I figured, hey, he's, you know, probably in full retreat. Let's go clean up some of these guys. But unfortunately, he did have the Crimson Killers here. We're going to come back and start whomping on these miners here, which is going to be pretty rough. So a little bit of a misplay there. I definitely should have kept my forces a little bit higher and tighter, but you know what, it's okay. It makes for some cool thematics here. So these guys they're fighting pretty hard. The miners are actually still confident. They've racked up 16 kills. This other group of miners is chasing this Night Goblin Shaman down. You can see they all got their pickaxes out, which is pretty funny. But you know, hopefully they can hold, and you can see they're just getting pretty much massacred by these Crimson Killers. In the main fight, however, the Arachnarch Queen is still just running from the High King, and let's look at High King Thorgrim's buff while we're here. So High King Thorgrim's buff, the High King, gives 8 melee attack, 8% charge bonus, 12% weapon damage, and immunity to psychology. And it's disabled if his leadership is higher than 50%. So essentially when he's like threatened, you know, it kind of rallies all the other dwarves to the High King and gives him immunity to psychology, which is nice. Because in a lot of matchups, people are going to try and Lord Snipe, and when you have High King, it can be pretty punishing. So my opponent does have a little bit of a force if we take a look at the overarching way of things. The not balance power, but the troop count. I actually have 825 to 453, which is always bad when you're playing the Green Tide and you have less than the Dawi, because the Dawi infantry are very, very powerful for their cost. I mean, I don't know if I would say powerful, but they're cost effective and very, very tanky. Excuse me. So my forces are going to be advancing right here. The miners and the longers of the Great Opens are going to kind of engage, and he does have the Arachnarch Queen coming in to get a nice rear charge. So very well played by my opponent, kind of you know, outmaneuvering me, and the High King is still like waddling in the distance. You can see those longbeards that are carrying him are probably getting a little bit tired. So, but hey, you know, they're doing their best here. And also my Rangers and everyone are starting to tee off on this guy again, and I'm hoping that we'll get him to army losses before this Arachnarch Queen can generate, you know, a lot of value. So I racked up 41 kills, which isn't terribly devastating, but High King's coming in. He's got some miners. He does also have the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, and these guys are just such monsters. I mean, they racked up 57 kills, and in that entire duration of racking up 57 kills, they only lost one model, which is pretty absurd. I mean, they're at 89 of their 90 starting models. So they're coming in here pretty aggressively, and they're definitely going to route these foul Greenskins back to the hills. So as far as the forest goes, there are some Forest Goblin Spider Riders, and the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are going to go kind of clean those guys up, make sure they don't come back and rear charge my Rangers here, but I'm pretty much out of ammunition anyways. But the BUGMAN'S Rangers did take some HP damage, but it's pretty cool. A lot of people don't know this about BUGMAN'S Rangers. They actually do have self-healing. So if you're in like I don't know, it's kind of weird to find a niche for these guys, but I'm kind of excited to try them in more matchups because they self-heal. So if you're in a really atrocious missile trade, you both take some damage, these guys will actually heal up and, you know, be a little bit more effective. So pretty neat stuff there. So the High King Thorgrim is kind of chasing down the Arachnarch Queen, and I started targeting the Queen with my Goblopper in the back just to kind of break its leadership, because I figured if this thing would eventually break, then, you know, his whole army would. So the High King's going in there. He does have the support of the Grumbling Guard and some of these miners, so they should be able to kind of shatter the last of the Greenskin forces. So well played to my opponent. It's definitely a fun one. You know, the Vanguard was pretty cool. Like getting those 4 miners over there in Vanguard with the Rangers. And I really like that kind of screening. So the Rangers are going to shoot, the opponent charges, you blast and charge them, you run back. It kind of like disrupts them and knocks them over. All the while they're taking, you know, additional missile fire, which is pretty neat. Granted, in order to make this work, I really needed to have like a strong center core. So that's why the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers were so essential. But yeah, it was pretty fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Very well played to my opponent, Horzak. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder. And hey guys, I got a lot more content coming soon.